Reason number one for 1 Timothy 2, verse 11 to 12, which says, "A woman in quietness, let her learn in all submission, but to teach. I am not permitting a woman nor to exercise authority over a man. Rather, she is to be in quietness." Why? Verse 13, for, because, here comes the first reason, because God gave men authority over woman, just as the firstborn son has authority over the rest. Verse 13, for Adam was formed first, then Eve. The first formed. God could have formed or created men and women in at least three ways. God could have created Adam, the man, first, then create Eve, the woman. Or God could create Eve, the woman, first, then create Adam, the man. Or God could create Adam, the man, and Eve, the woman, simultaneously, same time. But God chose to form Adam, the man, first, then Eve, the woman. Adam was the first formed, Eve was the second formed. Let's look briefly at the Old Testament and New Testament teaching about the firstborn to understand why Paul used this reason in 1 Timothy 2 verse 13, Psalm 89 verse 20 and 26 to 27. "I have found David my servant. With my holy oil I have anointed him." This is God speaking. So David is the anointed king. God anointed him as the king. "He shall cry to me, he shall cry to God, 'You are my Father, my God, and the rock of my salvation. And I, God, will make him,'" David, "'the firstborn, the highest of the kings of the earth.'" The firstborn, the highest of the kings of the earth. There is a direct link between being the firstborn and having supreme authority. There were, of course, exceptions to the norm. Sometimes the firstborn was not given authority. But note this example. David was not Jesse's biological firstborn. He was not Jesse's firstborn son by birth. But God appointed David to be his spiritual firstborn. God's spiritual firstborn. From David's example, we know that exceptions did not abolish the normal practice of giving authority to the firstborn son. God simply appointed David to be the firstborn and gave him supreme authority. Now, this direct link is between being the firstborn and having supreme authority is maintained in the New Testament. Do not think that the link between the firstborn and having authority was only during the Old Testament. That's not the case. It is even true in the New Testament. Colossians chapter 1 verse 15 to 18. We are speaking about, Paul is writing about Jesus. He, referring to Jesus, is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of our creation. For by him, by Jesus, all things were created, in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things were created through him, through Jesus, and for him. All things were created for Jesus. And he is before all things. Jesus existed before all things. And in him, all things hold together. Jesus maintains the existence of all things. And he, Jesus, is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in everything he might be preeminent, or in other words, supreme. Revelation 1 verse 5. "And from Jesus, anointed one, the faithful witness, the firstborn of the dead, and the ruler of kings on earth." Firstborn of the dead, ruler of kings on earth. Why did God give Jesus supreme authority over all things? Because Jesus is the firstborn of our creation and firstborn from the dead. Hebrews 1 verse 6. And again, when God brings the firstborn, referring to Jesus, into the world, he says, let all God's messengers worship him, worship Jesus. Why is Jesus worshipped by the messengers of heaven? Because Jesus is the firstborn. In short, giving authority to the firstborn was practiced before the Mosaic law and during the Mosaic covenant. There were exceptions. However, it is undeniable that this was normal Old Testament practice. Indeed, the link between the firstborn and having authority continues into the New Testament. What's the proof? God the Father gives supreme authority to Jesus because Jesus is God's firstborn. Jesus is the firstborn of all creation. Jesus is the firstborn from the dead. That is why supreme authority has been given to Jesus, the firstborn. What's the relevance to 1 Timothy chapter 2 verse 13? You see, Adam was the firstborn of mankind. To be more precise, the first formed of mankind. Eve was the second formed. The first formed was given authority over the second formed. Adam was given authority over Eve. Man was given authority over woman. Therefore, man's authority over woman is based on the sequence of creation. Who was created first? Who was created second? Who was formed first? Who was formed second? Now, what's the link between 1 Timothy 2, verse 11 and 12, and verse 13? Okay, so let me read out again to help you see the link. Woman is to learn in quietness and be in submission, in all submission to man. Verse 11. And woman is not permitted to teach men nor to exercise authority over men. That's verse 12. Why? Because the sequence of creation shows that God gave man, who was the first formed, authority over woman, who was the second formed. Not the other way around. That's verse 13. Do you see how verse 13 provides a reason for verse 11 and 12? Now, note that this was God's decision for man to be the first formed and therefore to have authority over the second formed, woman. This was not even sinless man's decision. It definitely was not a socially constructed idea by sinful men. This was God's idea, and it was a very good idea. Genesis 1 verse 31, summarizing God's verdict, God's view, opinion of the status of his creation when he finished it all. He said in Genesis 1 verse 31, and God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. God formed Adam first, then Eve, and behold, it was very good. This sequence of creation was very good to God. Man's authority over woman was very good to God. And note also that verse 13 is about God's sequence of creating the first man and first woman. Adam first, then Eve second. Verse 13 is not a reference to Adam and Eve getting married. If Paul wanted to make a reference to Adam and Eve getting married, he should have alluded to Genesis chapter 2 verse 24, which says, therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. If in his mind, this passage, 1 Timothy 2, verse 11 to 15, refers to the relationship between husband and wife, his reasoning should have referred to Genesis 2, verse 24, which is the account of the first marriage. But he did not refer us to Genesis 2, verse 24. He did not bring us to see the first marriage. He brought us to see the first formation of Adam, the man, and Eve, the woman. Verse 13 is about creation sequence. Adam created first as man, then Eve created second as woman. Verse 13 is about Adam as man and Eve as woman. Verse 13 is about the relationship between man and woman, not husband and wife only. Verse 13 is about gender relations, not about marital relations. This passage, therefore, does not apply only to husband and wives. This passage applies to all men and all women, married and unmarried. So don't let anybody tell you, no, this is actually saying that wives shouldn't teach their husbands, or wives shouldn't teach exercise authority over their husbands. Yes, that's true, but that's not all that it says. It's actually saying more than that. It's saying all women do not teach any man. No woman should be exercising authority over any man. Why? That's because it's based on the first man and first woman relationship right from the beginning. Not talking about their first marriage. And notice again that Paul did not write, I am not permitting a woman to teach or exercise authority over a man, because we need to fit first century patriarchal cultural norms. He did not say that. So do not listen to anybody else who says, oh, that was just about the first century. The church needed to blend in and fit into the culture of that day, or else it will be too disruptive, and you disrupt that, and you spoil the witness of the gospel, and all that kind of nonsense. They are putting words in Paul's mouth, and therefore putting words in God's mouth, and they are lying and distorting the text. The verse 13 does not say anything related to fitting cultural norms. So don't listen to those people who assert that without evidence and in contradiction of the actual verse 13. Paul wrote, I am not permitting a woman to teach or exercise authority over men. Why? Because here's the reason. Adam was formed first, then Eve. In other words, this was based on a norm that God set when he first formed the first man and the first woman. This is the real reason. So in summary, verse 11, a woman in quietness, let her learn in all submission. But to teach, I am not permitting a woman nor to exercise authority over a man. Rather, she is to be in quietness. Why? Reason number 1, verse 13, because God gave man authority over woman, just as the firstborn son has authority over the rest. For Adam was formed first, then Eve. And this is why woman should be in all submission to men, not in authority over men. This is why women should be learning in quietness, not teaching men.